I'm doing a review of the Neural DSP Fortin Cali. Going on. Make area where is Nelly and come on, dude. Well, let's go over the interface. Okay. On the interface now, we do the same thing with Neural DSP with the menus. Got the navigation section on top here, where you got the pre-effects, which is pretty cool. This is what these effects are based on, so you know, get a good idea of where they're coming from. You have different levels of the sim on the bottom here. See the red light and the blue light, different types of, you know, from clean, overdrive. In the next row, the input, the gate, the mono and stereo, and unfortunately they didn't add a pitch thing yet. All the other Neural DSP stuff has an X, and this doesn't. Well, it's life. All this stuff is evolving. They're adding the pitch. One day, I hope they did it to all their sims, so you can basically take it to another level and don't sound like everyone else, you know, because it's a sim. First, the menu. And here's the menu again, and you know, so on. And you have the output. Okay, but after the amp, or 3 levels of the amp, you got the 10-band EQ, the IRs, which are basically the same idea like all Neural DSP stuff, where you can do all your adjustments as usual, and for each different amp. Change the cabs to something different. You basically come here And the post effects are really the same idea. Always delays and reverb. Sometimes different stuff. I guess Tom Morello. I didn't look at his sim yet, but there's all kinds of stuff out there. The sky's the limit with software. And that's basically the rundown of this. Of course, where you have pull switches, you know, you have thump, presence, so forth and so on. You pull this one by tapping on the bottom, so it gets all bubbly and stuff. You have a bright switch, the gain. Everything's pretty much, it's kind of cool. It's like the real 14. I mean, talk about some of this information here. Now let me get into this sim about the interface. The clean OD1, OD2 channels, push, pull, bass, bright switches, thump and hair, violent switch, built-in Zuul gate, Hexdrive, and grind pedals. Okay, you have to understand that these are based on Marshall, so they're explosive, like asymmetrical sounds, whereas of the symmetrical amps, they come at you right from the center, you know, like it's Stevie Ray Vaughan, you know, this and that. With this, it's like an attack. So they're very brutal British Marshall sounds, you know. The thing I liked about this amp was not that it was aggressive and brutal, like you know, but it had the cleans like the 5150 and 6505. So it's very versatile, it's kind of like the Soldano and the Mesa Boogie. It's a sweet, so it adds a lot of character. Has amazing sweet spots. Go on forever with this. It covers the best of the Marshall sounds and sweet spot. It's very, very, very good for jazz and other kind of stuff like the Mesa Boogie as well. neural DSP stuff is very pristine. It's very, you know, cool. And the fact that they recreated this, the Meshuggah, is just, you know, one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. So my conclusion about it is that the strengths in the extensive controls and the ability to dial in, just like all the other you know, neural DSP stuff, that makes it very, very desirable. You know, it doesn't have a true effects loop, as I mentioned in all the videos now. It has to be something that they have to do this, where you can put effects between your preamp and power section, the both tube, and then when you put your effects like that, like on a real amp, you can push a second amp, for example, with flange or phase, or like Zach Wow, and then you've got a massive sound. It does have a stereo thing, but they're not the same, you know, when they're through tubes, but they do sound really great. It's like a whole different thing. There are specific things that I can do with the 14 Cali sim that I can't do with a lot of other sims. And one of them is that beautiful British Randy Rhoads, which it's heartfelt in heart, you know. It reminds me of him and reminds me of this. But it's funny, it's a white looking Plexi, so, but it reminds me of the real 80s kind of like, you know, that's what people did, they can do best, you know. So the tones of this are very thick. The cleans could go to like original Fender Deluxe and 5150, 6150s. It covers really good Marshall sounds. Do you need it? Definitely. It's definitely a boutique amp you want to, if you have the money and you bought a lot of physical amps, it's definitely an amp you want in your studio as a collector, you know. It's definitely unique. It's not like you can do the same thing with the Meshuggah or just a plain Plexi. But it's got a lot of mods and the real one, you know. It's outstanding. You got to try them. Kind of reminds me of the Kerry King. Not that they're alike, but the Kerry King is an amp. The physical amp's really good, and the sim doesn't do justice. But if you know what you're doing, you can. If you're familiar with the real amp, you can get some good results. It's one of these sims though that are almost automatically good results. The presets alone take you down, you know, a rabbit hole full of stuff. Like when I did the Soldano and the Mesa Boogie review, this is another world where you have a lot of clean and delays and trippy ambient stuff you can do, you know, with dub music and stuff. It's definitely fantastic. When it comes to clean sections of amps, this and the Mesa Boogie and the Soldano definitely have a very separate, unique thing. This is a very British, Marshall-ish, and like it said, PV-ish clean sections. Anyway, thanks for watching. While you're here, feel free to check out some of the Electroform jewelry by myself and Mia. We also have an Etsy shop, and go ahead and do all that stuff like subscribe and follow us. We hope to see you again in the future.